I got to 400. It didn't work though.
No.
Yeah.
No, I could only get like 160.
Oh, really?
Well, at first it seems like the 400's faster, which it probably was. But
It's
now I'm
kinda
used to it, and
Yeah.
like to me it doesn't make it. I don't even know the difference. So
Right.
it might just be
Well,
mental.
we have the
It's
400
I got
here,
400.
too.
Today we are talking about recordings and how they affect our playback, and sometimes even limit what we hear or what can hear. So,
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're wonderful, but we've heard a bunch of stuff over in our lifetime over numerous 2-channel and headphone
A track
systems.
or two, a few
Yeah,
systems.
yeah, like most of the guys in the industry, you know, everyone's into music. That's why they're here. So at least I think that's why they're
Well,
here.
You hope it's a factor.
You would think so, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you know, we've all experienced some things. So I mean, we could probably talk about it and just see,
Yeah.
you know, what the deal is with some of these recordings versus others.
Yeah. So you always hear people on the forums complaining about recordings these days or albums these days are always just one certain way. They're too loud. They don't have dynamic range. They're not as good as the old recordings. And that's why some guys like analog, some guys like vinyl, because then you could run the older stuff. Old digital is kind of hard to come by.
Yeah.
You can't get 60s digital quite so much.
No.
And typically the early digital wasn't stellar. So how has the industry changed and shaped over the years, I guess?
Although, to comment on that, 60s and stuff, those recordings that were done on tape then, a lot, I think Sony and others had them archived properly, and they're actually converting that music to high-res digital. So technically speaking, you could get it in digital that was recorded, but it was initially done in
Right.
an analog domain, not recorded in digital.
Mm-hmm.
And technically, if you ask me, it sounds better. A lot of them do.
Well, it's also a modern digital.
Yeah, well, that's
Right,
true.
because I think most people would agree that at least today, if you care, if you have an individual that really knows what they're doing, you could get really great digital audio. But yeah, if you got a sound engineer that doesn't care, sure, you could get junk, of course. It's kind of the name of the game in all these situations, right?
Well, I think it comes down to what they used, like, to mix stuff in the 60s. You know,
Yeah.
they were limited. Like, you know, they didn't have the ability to reproduce bass like we do then. So a lot of stuff that was mastered then sounds thin today.
No.
So that's why you take the original tapes and remaster it now, and then it sounds completely different sometimes.
Maybe analog was just better at the
Well,
bass
it's
than
not,
it
it's
is
not the
today.
analog, though. I'm just saying when they originally mixed it, the speakers they were using,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, right.
they weren't able to do bass like,
Yeah, they had a single 15-inch paper cone.
Yeah.
With at best case scenario, concentric, some sort of tweeter or something in there. But yeah,
That's a factor for everything, though. I think it's a lot of times misunderstood, but more or less, if you're making a thing, you expect that it's going to be used in a particular fashion. So in the example of, say, recording something, recording music or audio, you know people are going to play it back. At least you hope they do. And you know they're probably going to play it back on a similar set to what you're presumably going to have there in the studio. So if you try to make it sound good on what you expect people to play it back on, basically long term, you're going to show the limitations of that gear. Because you're going to have whatever the variance in that gear is, you're going to tailor the music so it sounds good on that, but later on it might not.
yeah. Well, it's
That's
it's
troubling.
particularly true for video because like
Yeah.
TV shows, especially low budget TV shows from like the 60s and stuff, they knew you're going to watch it on a little black and white TV.
yeah, they didn't have like any speaker.
Yeah,
in
but
those things. They
now,
had
no, I'm just
3-inch
saying the video though,
right.
and the audio, but the video
Yeah.
mainly. And now they went back to the original film, scanned it in 4K or whatever, and you're watching it now in HD, and everything looks so bad. Like you see mistakes everywhere. And
Right.
Right. They weren't worried about it.
Yeah, right,
Because they
'cause you
didn't
couldn't
think
see
you were
it.
going to see it at crazy
Well, I
resolution.
don't think they could see it either.
They
I mean,
couldn't. That was the
right.
problem.
No one had monitors like today.
No.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah,
But
so
the-
like even the set, they weren't worried about making the set amazing and perfect because they're like, well, you're not going to see it either way.
Well, what? So the ones that do look good, they probably have the original film.
Yeah.
Oh, so they're
Yeah,
they're properly putting that to digital.
Yeah. You're
Because some
scanning
of the
the
stuff
original
looks
film.
great. you
Well, it
know?
looks good, but I'm saying physically, there's a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Like,
If you take that same recording and try to up sample to
Well, you-
current instead of in other words,
you
you're
get to
not.
start with the original.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm just saying.
the same with audio.
They couldn't see the problems back
It's
then.
the same with audio. You've got a lot of tracks that weren't necessarily saved properly in the past, or they were put down on a 44.1, whatever the sampling rate was of the early digital and whatever it was the late 70s, early 80s. And they never really, there was no higher master than that.
Well, yeah.
That was the master. So you can't make that sound better. You know what I mean?
That is kind of a
whatever
problem.
it is, it is. So I guess it's kind of a similar thing to the old stuff. Except to me, the old stuff, if you still got an original master tape, it's pretty good, man. I mean, if it's played back properly,
Wow.
And it was recorded properly.
Well, that too.
Because
Yeah.
it's not to say everybody cared.
Yeah.
Some
Well,
people
yeah.
care more than others, just like today,
Yeah.
just like back then. Same
Yeah.
deal, right? So I guess that's part of the issue. You see variance. You could have wonderful recordings from the 60s, 70s, 80s, but you could also get trash. Everything always has variance. So
Yeah, but that goes for today too. So I guess that doesn't vary. I'm buying albums now, older albums, used somewhere wherever I can find them, and once in a while, and a majority of them, even though I know the artist, a majority of them don't sound so good.
Yeah.
I guess when I was younger, everything sounded good to me because I had shitty speakers, and so it was okay. But nowadays,
you had the system that the engineer recording the thing expected you to have.
yeah, probably, yeah, right, exactly. So, AC/DC didn't sound so bad in vinyl, but I'll play that now, and it's like, well, it looks like it needs EQ or something,
Well, it's like an NES. You look at it on
Yeah.
a tube TV, it looks exactly what you expected. It looks good, right?
It's true.
You look at it on a lot of LCDs, they don't really do it quite right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's way more jittery than it needs to be.
Well, there's
Yeah.
a lot of problems.
You kind of
It's
need
already jittery to begin with.
you need the intrinsic limitations of the devices when they were making these things for the thing to look the way it was expected. You put it on modern gear, it doesn't always work right. And I don't think that's the case for old music a lot of times, but it can be. It depends on how it was recorded. But you could get recordings today that are awful. And I think a part of that factor is it's easier than ever to do recording now. Like you could get away with just a cheap laptop. You
Yeah.
could get away with producing music with that, whereas it was much more challenging in the early days. So now I think since the barrier to entry is so low, which is wonderful, you see more smaller artists, it means the emphasis on the quality isn't quite always there. I'm not sure if that's an intrinsic limitation or not. I guess there's pros and cons, but
Well, it's not that you
It's a
can't make
factor.
a good recording with.
right, not everybody chooses to, because you see the common argument that people make over and over that all digital is junk or all new recordings are junk, and that's certainly not the case.
Yeah.
No.
A lot is, but a lot's wonderful too. So it just depends on whether or not the person really puts emphasis on quality. And it's the same case for old recordings too. I guess there's probably a bit of bias there. People are looking at old recordings that were done well. They're not looking at the trash recordings.
Well,
Those
yeah.
are lost to the time mostly. And yeah, if you look at old recordings that were done well, you could make the argument that, oh, look at this old recording and it sounds so good, but it's kind of the survivor bias effectively. You're hand picking the stuff that was good. And you could do the same for today's stuff. You could find awesome stuff in all different eras.
Well, when you think about it too, the strange thing is, being called pro or the pro side of things, you'd think they'd have more of a typical format that everyone uses that's similar in terms of what they're listening to or for.
Yeah.
But it seems to be as mixed bag as it is us guys playing back.
Kinda. I
There's
think
no
that-
real reference type thing.
Well,
some
there's
people,
a lot of passion.
Yeah.
People have different feelings on how they want it to sound or how they think it should sound. And they have different gear that they like to listen
Just
to.
like we do on playback. It's
Right.
the same thing.
There's a lot of variance
Yeah.
in audio. People have different preferences.
And it is kind of art. It's art in a way. Sure, music is art, and I understand that. And I think they should. I think they should record it the way they want it to. They want it to be heard, and it is easier today to do that than ever. No one's splicing tape anymore.
Yeah.
It was a lot cheaper to start.
Well, yeah, way.
The barrier to entry is incredibly low because so many people that would be interested in doing that have everything they need already. right?
Us just doing this recording is like the first thing we keyed in on is let's get some nice mics that have good vocals, right? For voice.
Yeah.
And I think that's a start. Like same with us. If on the playback side, speakers, headphones, that's critical. The electronics you could work on, everything else you could work on. But if the transducer's off to begin with,
Right.
you're just working around a problem. So I the way I see it on playback, because I've been listening to music for a long time, longer than you guys have, and so I'm probably go a bit further back, and you guys are more into the modern stuff. I'm into more vintage.
Okay. Vintage, yeah.
But anyway, bottom line is what I've found is that really on a playback system, if you want to play everything well, there's only two options. One, you just kind of dumb it down so it doesn't have a lot of resolution and everything's just more subdued. You don't have a lot of highs there to mess anything up. The bass is okay and nothing sticks out, which is boring as crap. That's not the way I recommend going. Or you pay particular attention to every detail in the playback chain, removing faults through the system so that they don't mix and beat against the faults in the recording. Because that's where it goes wrong. You got problems in recording and a similar problem in the playback chain, and it's a double whammy. So the way I look at it is if you work on a high-end system or even a headphone system and you really work on it, I mean, everything, tweak everything out, play with different amp stuff, you get to a point where you'd be surprised, how much you can play.
It's going to take some time, though.
It takes time. It's not, you can't go like that and come up with a solution, unless you copy someone that's already got it.
Well, that's a good start.
Yeah. But anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah, I guess that summarizes our take on the thing.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Thank you very much for watching, and take care of yourself.